Rossville Center. That's Michael there.
You're speaking with Joe and,
Richard, you want to start off?
yes, sir. So this application encompasses a proposal to construct a one-story, 8,400 square foot emergency room addition to the existing facility located at 670 Stoneleigh Avenue. Some preliminary comments is that it should be referred to the Carmel Fire Department. The requirement of a New York State Department of Conservation, Environmental Conservation, stormwater permit will be needed. The applicant may be required to go into a stormwater control facility maintenance agreement with the town. What we need for additional comments are provide a copy of the amended stormwater pollution prevention plan. All turning radii for the site should be graphically provided. Additional details for sizing criteria should be provided for the proposed hydrodynamic separator. And sidewalks, catch basins, and plantings should all meet those as identified in town code, sections 128 and 142 respectively.
As it pertains to zoning, all of the criteria have been addressed. There are no comments.
So as Rich indicated, this is an expansion of the emergency room. We need to know a little bit more information about why the emergency room is being expanded. Is this to increase the capacity of the facility? Is it serving a different geographic area and so forth? So clarification for the record as to why the expansion is being done. Same thing, additional employees being utilized at the facility and so forth. So the intensity of the operation is changing. Currently, there's over 1,000 parking spaces on the site. This expansion will remove some of those parking spaces. Dawn, if we could put on the table the overall parking tabulation of the site, so we know the net difference and change. I think you're still above the required number in any event, but to have that calculation for Mike in the future going forward, if we could put it on the plan. There's a new access driveway being proposed and a bypass driveway around that. And as Dawn will show you in a couple of minutes, ambulances will have the opportunity to circle into the new bays. There are 3 relocated parking spaces sort of at the edge of that circular movement. So if, Dawn, you could provide a turning template just to make sure there are no conflicts with that maneuver and those proposed parking spaces. The area where there is landscaping being removed, or parking being removed, there's a few landscape islands in there, and we'd like to reclaim as much landscaping as could be done, so we're not losing landscaping in a parking area. That would be an objective of ours. And just clarify if you're adding any new exterior site lighting to that area.
Yes, you want to go over that?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening. Dawn McKenzie from Insight Engineering. We are the civil engineers, landscape architects for the project. I'm here tonight with Joe Sinisi from HealthQuest. Should you have any questions that he can address, and also Carrie May from Stefani and Bradley Architects. They're the designers of the building, the work on the building. So, I'll move this over. Just to give you a brief overview of the project, Pat covered it pretty well, but picture's worth 1,000 words. And right now, this is the through driveway coming from the main entrance. And currently, when visitors come to, or patients come to the emergency room, they have to circle through the existing parking lot in this area here to get around, to get to the addition. And what this project proposes, in addition to the expansion of the building, this expansion to the emergency department, is to provide this new driveway connection. Right now, ambulances come up that secondary emergency entrance from Stoneleigh Avenue and on the South Drive, and they come up this driveway and cross in right now against the building. And they have a shared entrance area into the emergency department with patients coming in. And we're providing that patients as well as ambulances will come in, they'll come in this way or come in this way off of Stoneleigh Avenue and follow this driveway, which is a designated driveway. Patients won't be passing through the parking lot anymore to get to the emergency department. And then it separates, and there'll be signage, of course, to clearly define which way you're supposed to go. And the left driveway that splits off will be for the ambulances, and they'll have this separate bay area for ambulance docking and extra ambulance parking, and another driveway here on the right that leads up around that to this emergency parking area. There'll be a drop-off in this location, and the new entrance is down on this side of the building, which is primarily where it is now. We're just removing the ambulance access in that location.
Is there a
Not-
Is there a canopy over there also?
There's a canopy provided at the drop-off,
Or what about the ambulance side?
and there's also a canopy provided at the ambulance base, correct? Right. And that gives you a brief idea of what the project is. And in response to some of the comments that we received, we've already sent the plans to the fire department for their review. We understand we need a SWIP amendment from New York City DEP. The project is redevelopment. All of our proposed changes are within previously developed areas of the site, and what that means is we're also not going to have an increase in impervious cover, so it should just be a simple SWIP amendment. We're not going to have to go through a full review for the SWIP. And also, if that's the case, then the hydrodynamic separator will not be needed unless there's an additional requirement that the town has for it, but not that we're aware of. We needed to verify we were going to have a reduction in impervious cover, and we put that in as a placeholder just in case. So we'll be taking that back out. All right, as far as the purpose of the expansion, what the hospital is looking to do is to provide better service and better patient experience to the people that it already serves. It's not that they're looking to expand their geographic area. It's more to, make it a better experience. What they're doing is, I know we submitted a project description, but I'll run through it quickly for you. They're going to increase the number and type of specialty treatment rooms from 17 to 28 and upgrade them with state-of-the-art equipment. They're going to provide a new nurse station, which will better serve staff and patients. There are some other items in here, additional support service amenities to serve the new expansion. We already talked about the separate walk-in entrance and waiting room. They're doing a new waiting room for the patients and providing that separate and distinct ambulance entrance, as well as reworking the circulation. And the whole purpose of this is to provide better service so that patients can be fast-tracked and diagnosed more quickly with shorter waiting times. That's pretty much the basis of it. Joe, do you have information on whether there'll be new staff added about this? If not, we can get back to it.
You gotta go to the
You gotta
microphone.
step up, sorry.
Joseph DC with HealthQuest. At this time, we're currently not planning any additional staff to service the addition. The addition is based on volume. We have about 27,000 patients a year that come through. With the increased volume, we want to create additional treatment rooms, and we'll be creating specialty rooms. We'll be adding 2 triage rooms. We'll be adding a fast track area to the existing ED. So we'll be adding to the ED, but we're also going to be making it more efficient. We'll be adding an additional nurse station within the space, so the staff will actually have, won't be increased, they'll be floating from one space to another based on demands. So when we have our peak times, the staffing would go from one area in the addition to and utilizing the existing. So it wasn't the intent to increase staff, it was just to increase efficiency and to create better rooms that would service the public. Also to create a better experience for the patient and the staff by getting them through the waiting room and into a larger emergency department that gains them space and services without sitting just in the waiting room. So the waiting room won't be, overcrowded.
Carrie Hangley, Stephanie Bradley Architects. I just wanted to highlight too, as Joe mentioned, the existing emergency department is seeing that volume today. So they're seeing 27,000 visits in 17 treatment bays. So the issue is not expanding volume. They're very aware that there are other hospitals in the area that are still serving this greater service area. But the new codes that are in place from a healthcare perspective actually require larger
Excuse me?
Stoneley Avenue.
Relative to? Okay. This is Stoneley Avenue, running along the site. This is the main entrance to the hospital.
Yes.
That comes up in here, and you actually circle through past the visitor and patient parking around the building to get to it. And the emergency department is back here.
Yes.
And the alternate emergency entrance was South Drive, which is a project that was built within the last 10 years. That comes into this location here and circles up, and this is where the ambulance and emergency entrance is right now. It would come up that way as an alternative to coming all the way to the hospital. And that entrance situation is not going to change. It's just making it better and more defined and separate to get around that new addition.
At present, it goes up and makes a circle, comes out, doesn't it?
It does.
What's the change? What's the change?
The change,
Will you still
oh,
be able
you're talking about the proposed
With this
project
map.
area?
Yes.
Okay, so, all right, so right now, this
It
line
comes
right
out-
here
where's the line up?
represents the existing emergency department, right in
Sure.
this area here, right?
Yes.
Okay, and this is the addition that we're proposing. I'll show that on the larger plan,
Okay.
okay? So existing emergency department, right here, all right? And this is the proposed addition to give them more space. All right, and then coming up from Stoneley Avenue, this is that South Drive coming up, South Drive coming up. This is where all of the parking areas are on the south end from the last, the furthest one being from the last project. And if you're coming up that secondary south driveway, comes up, and you would come up this way, which is one way, going in to get around the building. Ambulances, and the emergency entrance is still in the same location it is now. It'll just be in the new addition as opposed to the existing emergency room. And it'll no longer share space at the drop-off with the ambulances.
It still doesn't go around the building, and it comes back down, does it?
No, it doesn't go
It
around the building and come back
doesn't.
down. They'll go back
You
out the same way they came in. You can go around the building. There is a connected driveway around there. That was another project historically that was done.
You're making an improvement up there where that driveway comes in up top. They can circle around and go up. Now it comes up and make a turn and come right back out, correct?
The addition is in that driveway now, right?
Correct. You can't go back across that. It's one way now. One way in to the ER.
You
have
you
to
have to
loop
go,
around.
you have to go out around the back.
Or loop around
Or around upper parking.
into the parking lot.
Yeah.
Or through the parking lot.
You come back to the parking lot, go back through the lot.
Right.
But that
just
one-way
wondering.
drive has come where the addition is now.
Why wouldn't they put some kind of way that it could come in and make a circle and go back
back
out the
out.
other side?
I think room, they would need to have a two-way aisle on that,
They got a lot of room over there.
not to keep all the parking spots.
That's the thing, they lose parking.
They don't want to lose too many and
Right.
keep it as close to the building as possible.
I mean, even now, when they leave,
Seen
they're
a
still
lot of
going to have to exit either around the building or through
And they
this
can get
parking
hemmed
lot,
up in
but
there. That's the only question.
How many ambulances can you handle now? Currently?
does it take 3 now? Yeah, it takes 3 now.
How many will it be afterwards?
There'll still be 3 bays.
Okay, so it's still the same.
But they'll be over.
3 bays, but we'll also have parking for emergency vehicles as well.
Right.
So oftentimes you'll see that an ambulance is accompanied by a police cruiser or, some other alternate form of emergency vehicle. The primary
Within
concern
that
here was
area.
let's separate the pedestrian and the ambulance traffic, because when things are happening fast and you're in an emergency, ambulance drivers are professionals and they know how to handle that situation, but if you have somebody who's got a sick child that is in a panic state, they are not paying attention to pedestrian traffic or ambulance traffic, and they just want to get to that front door as soon as possible. So separating those 2 traffic routes is really important to this project. And we also didn't want to complicate things by sending people back through that same way, again, just to keep that flow, because usually when you're going home, you're a little calmer. So you can take the time to go a little bit further around through the parking area.
Right.
And the ambulances would have two points of exiting. After they drop off, they would be here. They have this, they could either go straight around, this aisle is still here, this is the existing aisle that we have now. And they can go around the complex complex that way, or if they chose, they can go up here, take a right, and just go out the parking lot this way. So they still have, they would still have the drive-through potential, Harold. And also too, now with the people that would come up here, now they have their own area to drop off and to park, separate from where the ambulance is. So the two areas did separate nice, so there will be no confusion like we currently have now.
You did one great thing. You brought Joe along, and I always like to argue with him. Now I'm gonna do it. Joe, the thing of it is, it's not ordinarily. I was thinking, as long as you're putting that in there, why not get it so that it can handle some, you know, like we read about in the paper, some great calamity have, and there's 10 ambulances that comes into that hospital. Where do they go?
Okay, well, we have enough room right now for, we have 3 right here that are going under the canopy. We have 3 additional parking spaces here, and if it was tight, you would still have some space just here on the side if they had to.
It's not a matter of parking, but how do you get them out of there?
Oh, they
To go and make a return and come back.
would drive out like this.
But I asked the question before, could they get out of there?
Yes, yes, they can, they have a 2-way lane getting out. More than enough room.
Could you show us those turning movement templates?
Yes, we'll do that.
Just to see how that can, it's an unusual geometry in there, so let's take a look at that.
So I just have, sorry, I have a quick question. So the 3 bays for the emergency or ambulances are right there.
Yes,
Across from that, there are an additional 3 spaces.
right, up here.
Would that be what's considered the emergency parking for emergency vehicles other than ambulances as well?
Yes,
Correct. Or it could be ambulance overflow.
right. And
Oh,
it is separated, this entire area is separated from visitors or patients
Okay.
parking.
But then if a pedestrian parks there, they still have to go around? Or is there a
It's-
walkway or an access point?
It's not pedestrian
not.
parking in
So
order for,
It's just emergency? Okay.
it's strictly for the emergency vehicles, correct.
There's a 4-foot retaining wall there too.
There is here between this lower parking
Correct,
area,
so
the
nobody-
doctor's lot.
People aren't gonna be walking across there, they'd have to walk out and go
Right.
across.
So if someone's driving someone in their car?
Yes.
emergency, where would they park?
They'll park in this area here, which is where they park now. This is the emergency parking area, and it's separated, this right here. And if you want, I can bring the plan up closer, I know it's hard to see at this distance, but this is an island that separates it. So they'll come in this driveway, there is an island here to divide visitor or patient traffic from emergency vehicle traffic. And it clearly directs them past the emergency area to get them into that parking area. We're trying to create a clearly defined, separate way to get to that, so that when someone comes in in the middle of the night, you know, an emergency and they're panicked, it's easier for them to get where they need to go and not, you know, reduce confusion and provide better access. Yes?
Is there any reason why the divider doesn't go all the way up to the end? In other words, it looks from here, and maybe I'm mistaken, but it looks like if you were a patient coming in a regular vehicle, you could, at the end of it, make a left and go over by the
Yeah, that's-
ambulances.
It looks like they could still cut across into those 3 emergency vehicle spaces.
We can certainly expand it there if you prefer that. We need to test the maneuvering further and make sure that that's
I don't know
not
if it's just the
necessary.
way the drawing is, so I guess if we see something close up, maybe.
Well, we are providing striping at this location.
Okay. So it's just striping, not...
It's striping, it's clearly demarcated that you're not supposed to cross that, but, you know, we could expand the island. We'll take a look at that more closely.
Also, too, keep in mind, you know, they wouldn't have access through here if a patient did come in, but the entrance into the ED is right here, and it'll be clearly marked, so even just by default, as they're coming up here, they're gonna know that this is the place to go.
And there's
You know, with signage.
clear
So
signage.
They would, and this is
As
gonna
well.
be, this is gonna be open and dedicated to emergency, for patient parking anyway. Like right now, this existing space here is used for, actually this small space here is used currently for the emergency vehicles, and there's patient parking now. This will be totally dedicated to the patient parking and not for staff or anything else. any other overflow vehicles would be able to also utilize this entrance, you know, in the case that we went beyond the 6. But most people, that they'll see this will be such a comfortable flow, and seeing the open parking spaces that are dedicated for them, they're going to automatically go there. That's what we're hoping for.
That's the intent.
Yes.
I think maybe additional signage might be necessary if you're gonna keep where the ambulances are and those other 3 spots at that lower section versus the upper. I think you have signage in there, I don't
We do,
remember.
there is signage proposed.
And it says emergency parking only, emergency vehicle parking only. I believe that that's there. Oh, and there's a no left turn one, so there is some signage in there, but that may just bring that out so it clarifies it for the board.
Okay.
Because I think that's kind of, the confusion is I'm driving in, I have a sick child, I'm
I
gonna
know,
go to those 3 spots.
you're gonna see this and
Yeah.
think that's where you're supposed to
I'm not gonna go to the
go.
ambulance, I'm gonna go to those 3 spots, so.
Mhm.
But with this canopy too, you know, you have that, you know, that distinct feeling, you know, with emergency vehicles here. It'll seem like a garage type area versus, you know, coming into the more informal, you know, entry. So I think it'll be a natural effect to go right there.
That's why I asked about the canopy, because that really tells you don't go there.
Yes, yes,
You do act a little different when you're sick.
yes.
Yes,
So that-
understood.
And that's
Yes.
what this divider is. So we know people are gonna be coming in distraught. And that's why having a large parking space like this, it's gonna be able to serve their needs.
And that has a sign that says emergency parking, emergency room parking or something?
Yes, and we can control the staff parking through our, you know, through administration and security. You know, so that's not gonna be an issue.
Am I? You mean if you put a sign that says emergency room parking, I got a bad stomach ache, I'm gonna talk about that.
I'm not talking those 3 alternative spaces there.
I'm gonna park the first one I see, as long as I can get in there. That's why we wanna make sure you get out of there. The ambulance can get in there. Because other people gonna be that sick beside me.
The canopy is gonna say what? Exactly, is it gonna say emergency vehicles or
There's some elevations, right? Yeah.
ambulance?
I think the idea that you can get out of it, but go around that building is a big asset. It make that shores available that they can.
This shows the canopy, but not what it's going to say.
Typically, we would see the ambulance canopy read
Ambulance,
ambulance
okay.
versus the front entrance, which would typically say emergency, walk-in. You know, we have to work through those details with the hospital, but they're usually very distinctly different. And then we had proposed one additional signage location, which is on the smallest space of the building as
This
you
one?
approach, which directed you for the emergency department with a big arrow to go around the corner. One of the problems with having the emergency department in the very back of the hospital is you require a lot of wayfinding to get there. So we didn't want people to, now that the new addition kind of bumps out into the parking lot even further, we didn't want the addition to confuse people from that manner. So the signage is our intent to direct people around the new addition.
The architecture here is gonna be similar to the relatively new architecture on the, what is that, the outpatient kind of areas that we're...
Yes, and we're connecting to the existing emergency department. We have adjacent materials that we're intending on matching. So for the brick, we're using a combination of the lighter color brick that's adjacent in the existing emergency department. There's a darker color brick that's present on campus as well. There's a little bit of a speckled look on some of the buildings, so we're pulling in that darker brick for some of the accent areas. But same materiality, we're actually carrying over some of the reveal stepping in the brick coursing that the existing ED has as well. And we're using the same types of curtain wall and proportions on the windows that the newest addition, I think it was 660.
So we match, you know, our intent is to match, you know, the design elements on that incorporated into this.
the newer edition, right? If you kind of,
Yes.
and then the interior, I looked at it quick, so basically you're doubling the size of your ER, if you will,
Yes.
right? And fortunately or unfortunately, I spent too much time in that ER. So I guess you'll work at the logistics as, like, I know to go down and get an x-ray, you gotta kind of cross a hallway and peek through doors and,
Yeah.
you'll kind of, I guess you would clean all that kind of stuff up.
Sure. The radiology department is not moving, unfortunately. But we do have pretty good access. They've actually invested in a mobile x-ray machine for the
Yes.
department, which is going to take care of, I believe, the staff's in about 85% of their x-rays. So the majority of cases will be able to be done right there in the emergency department when it comes to x-ray. For CT, those will still have to go back to the radiology department. That's, obviously a more intensive scanning process. And then the x-ray machine for anything that is not appropriate for the mobile scanner as well. One of the things that we have done with this design is actually create a pathway back to the existing hospital that doesn't require you going through the emergency department. One of the concerns that we had heard was that overnight, after 9 o'clock, visiting hours are over, the rest of the hospital is closed. But, things happen in a hospital and somebody needs to come to visit a family member because they're not doing well and it's 10 o'clock at night. Right now, they come through the emergency department to do that. So there's a corridor that we created right across the top of the plan so that they would be able to be escorted by a staff member or security through the rest of the hospital without going through the proper. So that was one important thing as well.
And I guess my last thing, this whole process, you'll stay operational, I would assume, through all this, right? You'll have to somehow keep everything,
Yes.
Yes.
phases and all of those kind of
Yes.
wonderful things.
The intent is to simplify the phasing as much as possible, so the new addition would be built in, and the site work obviously would be built in the first phase. And the intent would be that would be able to be certified by the state. Department of Health would have to come in for their final walkthrough, but that would be up and running before we start doing any of the renovation work that's
Inside.
required in the existing, so that they have the space available to.
Right, but you're still gonna have to get people around your new building right back to the old ER, right? There's gonna be some,
There's going to be
A
some
learning
site
curve
logistics
there, I would
we'll need
think,
to
yeah.
work through with the contractor, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we'll work that out in the phasing plan. And, our objective will be to not impact the patients is always the priority for Northwestern and Putnam Hospital Center. So we'll come up with a plan and we'll have security and anything necessary that would be required to make sure that there's a safe
to
passage.
get people back to where they gotta get to.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
We have to dedicate some other parking spaces, for them specifically, for the patients until we do the modifications.
In particular, the access for the ambulances and such, while that road's being reconstructed.
One last question. Is that interest for ambulance only? Is that for ambulances only?
And it's staff,
I mean, that's for ambulance, got a road dedicated to the ambulance?
that road on the side of the building,
Yeah, the new access.
But can anybody else go up there?
part of it, yes. Patients could.
I'm gonna make one more stab at this. There's a hospital in Silver Springs, Maryland. I had the unfortunate time to go there 4 or 5 times, maybe more than that. They had trouble with ambulances getting up in time and getting patients to the emergency room. So you know what they did? They put blinking lights there that says, "Stop, ambulance only." Guess what? People stopped. But they just put a flashing light there that said, "Ambulance only." What do you think happens to those roads? People go right up through them. I'm just telling you, that can happen. You can get the emergency. We may have had a catastrophe emergency around here in the county of the town, but it can happen at any time. When you need to get 7 or 8 ambulances up in there at one time. And I think you're doing a good job, but I think it's something you should consider.
Flashing lights on the ambulance roads.
Some kind of way to make sure that somebody else doesn't go up there. Like me, I do that sometimes.
Okay,
Let's, no, put the site plan up there.
That's.
sorry, I thought I had that up there.
So I think the Harold's point, he's saying if 6 or 7 ambulances show up at the same time, right?
Right.
And they get congestion in that road, is there a way to kind of open that up a little bit there?
Are you talking right off the Stony when you make the turn up in or further off?
Even when you
No,
come in,
right
when you
here.
get in there, right? When
Right
you get in there.
Right here.
Get there, right there.
If they
Couple
have-
of-
That's no big deal. We're not
Yeah.
asking you to build another road.
Right.
No, but if there was a jam here, the ambulances, they come in, they could just go around this way and come in this way too.
I'm not worried about the ambulance getting
Oh, you're
He's
concerned,
saying make that for
you're-
ambulances only.
you're concerned if there's a jam in this driveway here, that
Ambulance
it's
can't
gonna,
get in
that
there.
it's gonna back up patients getting up in the area.
Ambulance can't get in. We're not worried about the
We don't worry
patients.
about the patients.
You're not worried about the
Ambulance
patients, you're worried about the
ability to get to the ER as quick as possible is what Harold's saying.
Okay,
So if people can't go in there, it's always gonna be open for ambulance, I believe that's.
That's, sorry.
So if you close that to everybody but ambulance, put a flashing light that says ambulance only at the entrance there, make everybody else go around, he would feel more comfortable this way.
as a regular course of action, as opposed to
Always.
providing, okay. But then the alternative would be, we'd have to provide a separate driveway for the patients to get.
It's already there. All they gotta do is look at it.
Well-
They can get off that road and go right out through that parking area and get right up there where they gotta go.
Right, but then
Except-
once again, we have patients driving through the parking lot when they're coming in with an emergency and going all the way around. That's why we're trying to provide, I understand your point.
But you have to
I
understand.
do.
Understand, I'm not saying that's a constant thing.
Mm-hmm.
I say you gotta have something there that's designated in case the hospital gets a call that there's an emergency. When ambulances is coming in, 3 or 4 or 6 or 7 ambulances coming in,
Okay.
you have a reason, a way that you can close that off.
So this is, right, so this is situational. It's on occasion. It's
And it-
not
and it
on a
can-
regular.
And it can happen.
I understand what you're saying. Okay,
Yeah, so
We'll-
that
we'll,
signal at that intersection, which would indicate that at this time pedestrian traffic is not allowed
It's not
because
allowed,
there's a
yeah.
mass event happening, that's going to dictate 70 ambulances arriving at the same time.
Can I ask, there appears to be at the lower, what I'll call lower port entrance there, is that sufficient for the new configuration? Is that sufficient for 2 vehicles to pass? Is that only 1 lane wide or 2 lanes wide at that location?
you're talking about this
Right there.
right here?
Right there.
Right now, we have it at 15-foot wide.
Okay, so it's only.
It's
okay, so
only
a
15 foot
single-
wide.
Right. And then the access actually coming to it, the existing access is also only 15. That's all one
Yeah,
way.
I believe it is, right,
That's
and it
all
is
one
one
way
way,
right now.
correct.
Because I can see where, as Harold's saying, if a car's got stuck up in there in a queue, and someone driving an emergency patient in themselves, which regrettably I've had to do myself, I have 2 teenage boys, but nonetheless.
Yes,
I mean,
been there.
you know, if they got confused, something happened in there, you can't get anybody through there. So more to Harold's point of, I don't know if you can widen that throat and make it 2 separate pieces at some point, but I think the point's probably been made here sufficiently to look at that. I'm not sure just even having flashing lights saying, don't go left, go right, there's a bottleneck before that point, that if something were to happen, could be a problem. I also agree, though, that routinely sending them around through the parking lot is not
They can go around
a
if they got
great
anyway.
option either.
But there's ways, right, if you gotta get in there, you can get in, I would think.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want someone in a panic with their child in the car going through a parking lot where others might be walking and coming out, and, you know, that
Which
gets-
is what they do
I know,
now.
it's what you're trying to avoid.
Right.
I applaud the idea of separating the ambulance thing from, because right now they're way too close, been through that before, so, but I think there's a little more you can look at here
Okay.
overall.
Just take a look at it.
Just while we're on the topic, is there a particular reason why, when you designed it, you made it that bottleneck at the bottom and then opening it up?
Well, one of the reasons we closed it up is it actually to funnel everyone into that one location. I don't know how else to put it. If it's too wide, it almost,
You could put it another way.
Yeah.
You don't have the space.
well, we're
To
limited
do-
by space,
to
number
do
one.
what's there.
We are
Well,
limited by space because
stay
we're
the
trying to
same.
maintain as much parking in this area as possible.
Yeah.
That is number one. And, you know, and we're trying to make it a clearer entrance. I mean, we can widen it a few more feet, you know, and then it'll allow double traffic, but we didn't want to encourage two traffic lanes through there, because because when you're coming in, right now, if you're going to the emergency department, you turn in this driveway, and that is very clear. You don't have to decide immediately what lane you got to get into, there's not 2 lanes. You know, and you don't accidentally get in the wrong lane, because there's only 1 lane. And then as you get in, it gives you plenty of time and plenty of signage with pavement markings, as well as a divider island, to realize, oh, I'm going to the emergency room. I've got, you know, 150, 200 feet to figure out that I've got to get in the right lane to get to where I want to go, and the ambulance is getting the left lane. And it gives you time to realize, to get that clarification, if you come into this intersection and you're coming up here, and we can widen it up and take another look at that, and we will do that because that seems to be a
That's
concern.
That is
but
fine. But it's
you
got nothing to
understand
do-
why-
It's got nothing to do with the hospital gets a call that there's a 7 or 8 ambulances coming in.
Yep.
That you take care of that. That's the
Understood.
main issue,
Okay,
as far as I'm concerned.
Did you,
In the event of that happening, Harold, there's a protocol. I mean, if we got the call to the hospital through security and staffing and everything, and there would be other measures in place that they would do in a rare incidents like that.
I may not receive the call, so I go up that driveway. Understand? And I'm
Yes.
not the only
Yes.
guy to go up there.
Yes.
It's gotta be something that the hospital can do to make sure that you don't get into that driveway.
okay.
w-
We'll take a look at that.
gonna just throw this out there, was any alternative to this approach looked at? I'm just looking further up from the main access road, where the ambulances turn left now. If you go up a little further on your drawing, you see it right there, there's an island between two parking areas. Just go 100 feet up the main access road to the bottom of the page.
You're talking about
Go
here.
right there. Now cut straight across to join those two, go straight north, straight up on the,
You're
keep
talking
going.
about going this way?
Yeah, keep going. And cut straight through there, because you're losing that parking anyway. Keep going and connect to what you have now.
Okay. I see what you're saying. There's a 4-foot wall here. In order to make this a gradual enough slope to get all the way up to the emergency department at the elevation it needs to be, we have to keep this low because there's a basement. Grade-wise? Okay, I just want to point out,
It's up there.
right, I just want to point out the grade elevations between, right, as Mike
Okay.
said, from this driveway to this driveway, and from this driveway, actually, to the location we've got to come in here,
Okay.
it's just not going to
So-
work. Thank you for the
So, but it was
the
looked at, so
suggestion.
just all I'm
Yes.
asking. Now, another question I have. I don't mean
That
to
was
second
all
guess
good
your
questions.
stuff,
Nope.
We
but,
appreciate it,
It's
'cause we
fine.
did look at all different options for
Yes,
that.
Okay.
before we got to
Move
this.
that further away
Yeah.
from the building, but the reality is the grades are very challenging here.
tough, I know, it's really
If
steep
you've
back
been
there.
on site there, you'll know that the lower portion of the building there is actually a full story below
Yeah.
where you enter in on the other side.
Right, there's
So we
there's
were
an existing
challenged
entrance
with
here.
Bringing the ambulance around the building
Right.
and still bringing the grade up
Okay.
high enough.
That one piece of island, I suspect this piece of island just, right there at the corner of the new building, right at the corner.
here.
Yeah, that's just a low island, right? There's not a wall or anything there, visibility is good across to see ambulances already in place and so forth.
We have a grade transition along that aisle because we had to, like I said,
Yeah.
we're going up the hill to get up in here, but we're blending the grade with that and not putting a retaining wall.
Okay,
That's
just
our
so that
intention. We
increased
had
visibility
a
of
retaining
vehicles
wall in
coming
one
around that
iteration,
corner.
and yeah, we're using that island to blend the grade, but it does slope across that.
Okay,
So yes, to answer your question, there is good visibility
Good.
coming up that hill to see ambulances.
you can
and
see
vans.
that there's one maybe pulling out when the next one's coming
Yes.
in and all that good
Good
stuff.
visibility, yes.
I just want to throw out a scenario really quick. When you have an emergency, family members will either ride with them in the ambulance or a car will follow. I know that's what we've done in our family. When that car follows, they're following that ambulance quite closely. Wherever that ambulance goes, that family member in their car is going to go. So even though they may not decide to follow in the ambulance entranceway, they're going to go to that secondary where they should be going. They may see those 3 parking spots and jut right in there because they don't want to be too far from losing their loved ones and following them into the emergency room. So just keep that in mind, because when we talk about striped
Right.
versus maybe putting a curb cut or something, that may be something to consider.
Okay, and we'll also label those ambulance parking, but I understand.
Because a lot of times
Yes.
in panic, people
Yes.
don't think, they're like, I don't care what it says, I'm going.
Mhm.
And, and I'm
Yes.
sure all of us have done it, but it's just something to consider.
Mhm.
How you doing, Pat?
Doing good, I think you've got a good work to do.
We do, we'd actually like to come back to the next meeting, I believe it's on the 24th, if that's acceptable, so we can address more of your comments, and,
It's on the 24th.
is it on the 24th?
I'll let you know.
And it's up to you, you've got to make changes to the plan, so.
Yes. Yes, understood.
We're only on that agenda if you can do something for us.
Okay.
Yeah, all in all, I think this is a great improvement, right? That's a tough spot over there now, and I commend you for coming in. I think it's a great improvement for the community. Thank you.
74 people per day.
Yeah, and you do a great job out there, so. This will be a good improvement either way.
I think my son's name is on one of the rooms, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I spent way too much time there myself, so.
Do you have an idea of how many ambulances you get, whether it be per year or?
Not off the top of my head, but we can find out.
No, I'm just curious. I don't.
We did ask the question. They felt very strongly that 2 to 3 was a very normal number for them. They actually get a much higher volume of walk-in patients from that perspective. The max that they've ever seen, they told me it was 5 to 6. So 7 to 8 is still a reasonable number, and we can look at expanding those numbers to
You
make
know,
sure that
I
we're.
was gonna say 5 or 6, but my mouth just came up and said 8.
We did meet with the county, we met with Bob Cornell.
We did
with
with
this plan.
the EMS folks,
Yes.
yeah.
Just so you know.
Now that you mentioned the county, that's where all of my thoughts come from. At one time in the county, they had no business being there, but a fellow lost his hand. We had 10 trucks in that driveway. Now who else gonna get in there besides them? We had to get them out of there, but they was in there. And you get them in there, and you know the emergency, you have a problem. That's a true story.
Yeah.
Nothing happened while they was in there, but something could happen,
Right.
and you can't get nobody there. I didn't mean to tell that story. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Very much.
I don't usually go up that part of the road, I'm usually right into the emergency rooms.
JNL Properties,
The problem with boards that aren't the same size.
Michael?
The applicants propose to legalize 6 storage containers, sir. One per tenant to the lot to the rear of the existing Lupi Plaza. Provide a buffering landscape plan if you're doing one. I don't know if they were planning on putting anything around these metal bins. What is being stored in the units? Code allows for wholesale storage, but not for retail storage. Variances are required from ZBA for lot area, depth, front yard, and minimum floor area.
Rich?
The application is a 4-6, 8 by 20 by 8.5 storage sheds on the reference property. The applicant should provide a copy of this information to Main Pack Fire Department for review and comment. Additional details should be provided regarding the pads which the storage sheds will be placed. The drawing that was provided to us is cut off at the bottom, and some notes have been cut off. A new drawing should be submitted. Copies of any additional regulatory approvals should be provided for the file, and this project does not exceed any threshold criteria for stormwater disturbances, and therefore no state or DEP permits are required.
Pat?
Not much to say about this. There is as Joel pointed out, a wastewater treatment area that's located behind these storage containers. So if some thought was given, why can't you push them back further into the property? There's a prohibition to locating them there. So they're just off that rear parking lot. So they are proximate to the tenants in the building, so that's a benefit. They're not hauling their whatever all the way across to the rear portion of the property. Just to verify that there's no utility, no electric or anything going to the storage containers. Electric or the utilities going to the storage containers, so just verify that. And it also verify that none of the existing parking spaces are being eliminated to locate the storage.
Just to answer Michael's question, I'm sorry.
That's it.
Oh, that's.
What's he gonna do, set those containers?
Yep, the typical storage containers, 6 of them along that, Joel can point out, behind the building. And that's the other point, this is probably the best spot on the site to put visible.
Can't see 'em.
It's hard to see the building to begin with, but this would be behind the building.
They already are in existence, is that correct?
Yes.
Some of them.
Some, not all.
As Pat was saying, this is the loopy court over here, this is the cul-de-sac, this is the property back over here, and it requires one parking space, which we have over here. It will not take away from any of the existing parking spaces because this turn over here was left without any parking so that we have the entrance to our parking lot. With regard to Michael's comment, this is for wholesale storage, it's not for retail. Whatever's in here will be used by the tenants within the building. And as Michael said, we need several variances, so at this particular point, we'd like to get referred to the zoning board. So hopefully, if we get the variances, then we can come back and respond to the one or two comments that Rich had. That's it. And also, as Pat said, these are directly behind the building so that they're not visible unless you actually go into this parking area back over here. You cannot see them.
What's the wastewater treatment area? That's just a...
It's just a septic system.
Subsurface.
No, also,
Community
what,
though, Carl, it's for multiple, it's for all the resident, all that area in there. There's a bunch of facilities.
also there's,
It's from this complex, not
Yes.
up the hill. or anything.
oh, no. There's also an easement for New York State Electric and Gas, so that also restricts where we can put these because the depth of the lot is 100 feet. The New York State Electric and Gas easement is 75 feet, so we're within that 25 feet between the easement, New York State Electric and Gas easement, and our property line.
Joe, what's the difference between these that are temporary and the ones that I assume are permanent? Why aren't these being permanently placed as compared to temporarily placed?
No, some of them were there already, so that obviously we're not changing them. They will be permanent. They'll be placed on gravel.
As the other ones are?
Yes,
So these won't have there's no concrete slab or something
Correct.
to mount these on, just
Correct.
on gravel on grade.
gravel on
Well,
gravel.
the details aren't there, so that was one of my comments. I don't know what it's gonna be on, what they're on now, or
Okay.
what they're proposed to be.
Yeah, well, as I said, we want to try to get the variances first, and then, of course, we'll come back with all the details.
Okay, that's fine. Because the next question is would these in any way compromise any expansion area requirement? Doesn't that infiltration field have a 50% expansion minimum or no?
The answer to your question,
Because of the age, no, but
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think when the health department, that came in within the last, I think, 20 years. This was here already before that,
Oh, okay.
Yes, oh, yeah, right.
the expansionary requirement. But if they did need to do some septic work,
It
they would have to be.
That's the only area
we would
they'd
have to
have
use
left.
them, Obviously.
And they'd have to refurbish what they had.
Correct, that's correct.
Yeah, they're essential temporary containers anyway, right?
Right.
You don't take 'em
Well,
out,
that's why I'm
put 'em
asking,
on a
see if
truck,
they're,
get rid of
if they're putting slabs on down there, then it's a different
But if
story.
they last forever, they're gonna stay forever.
Yeah, if they let-
Right, but they're still a container, right? You're gonna pick it up and move it if you got it, right? In the end, if you had
It
a
is-
septic system,
One time.
right, you'd say, see ya.
So these are sort of like sealant containers,
They're
open
like
at one end, like
big
a
metal
door?
containers.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll bring some photographs at the next meeting.
wouldn't they be better oriented the other way? How,
No. The
mean, how
reason,
are they
again,
gonna-
the reason is, as I mentioned, this line here represents the New York State Electric and Gas easement. So if I turned it, I'd be almost into the easement.
And I can't let it straddle the property line, or else you need a variance for 0 feet on both
Correct.
lots.
Yeah, then you need, right, that's right.
okay, so this is not accessible by vehicle then? These are just folks carrying boxes in or out, right? I
Correct.
mean, okay.
Well, they can't back into it. There's a parking area right in front of it.
No, I understand. But I mean, you can't
But you
give a
can't pull it-
forklift or anything to
Right,
get,
no,
this is just
This is just hand
small
stuff. that you-
stuff.
Yeah,
Kind of.
exactly. That's it.
He's got it denied.
That's, yes, zoning board.
Any other questions? That I want to make a motion to deny to the
I
ZBA.
make a motion that we deny this applicant to the zoning board.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Can you place the note on that map about the wholesale storage only?
Yes.
Just so that this way it's crystal clear.
So there's no question.
Don't have any fire code issues, do they?
Fire department has to be notified because one of them is a pool company, so if they're gonna store any chemical,
Chemical,
then they
okay.
need to know.
Yeah, no,
That's good.
But
I will forward this as soon as it's,
Yeah.
Joe, you should add that note now, right?
what?
The one that you should add.
About the sure that they're aware of what's in
No,
there.
you had the note of the wholesale versus retail.
Yes, yeah, that's all, that's that on there.
I'm saying the note should be added now.
So, don't you have a better looking map of this? I mean, it sounds-
The next one will be much nicer.
I heard that the thing is-
Just did.
Not a real promise.
10?
I heard for 21.
Yes, 10.
18 or so. Thank you.
That should be okay. Just do chemicals.
Thanks, Joseph and Linda. That's you too, Joe? Michael?
All the necessary variances were granted by the zoning board of appeals and are noted on the plan.
Rich?
Engineering department does not have any comments regarding the lot line adjustment. The drawing still needs to be signed by the owners. There's a signature line on the drawing for both the parties to sign. That needs to be done as a final agreement.
Pat?
As Mike indicated, the variances were granted. If you remember, this is that little lot line adjustment to accommodate the dock that was off the property line. No issues associated with that. The variances are in place.
Don't have any questions? Otherwise, you need a motion to, not a motion, we can schedule a public hearing. Any objections?
Mr. Chairman, also, since this is a very minor project, we have a resolution.
Big line?
We have a resolution at the same time.
You haven't had a public hearing yet?
Well, can we have a, huh?
Well, we got to get the public hearing, then we'll decide what we can do with that. What do you think, Pat?
There's no issues with this. I think we can have a simultaneous resolution. And if there's comments at the public hearing, we don't act on the resolution.
You're getting kind of lenient in your old age.
This is a simple.
No.
There you go.
Okay, Joe?
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Woodcrest Farm?
Oh, happy Mother's Day to all.
Thank you.
To what?
Michael? Woodcrest Farm?
I have no objection. They did not do the construction. I have no objection to the return of the bond.
All the resolutions have expired with respect to this, right? All the timeframes, everything's expired, we confirmed all that.
Rich?
As Mike said, no work has been performed at the site. As Joe said, all the resolutions have been expired. The original bond amount of $136,056 was posted in 2011 and then renewed in 2015. The applicant has requested that they have their bond returned, and we recommend that it be released because nothing's been done.
Pat?
Ditto.
Anybody here? You didn't have to come up. I don't think we need them to comment, correct? Anybody have any questions from them? They never did anything. So we'll schedule a public hearing. And we're not sure we're gonna give you, but you have a public hearing at the next, we're gonna schedule a public hearing for
Return.
the return of bond at the next meeting.
Right.
It requires it, so.
Okay?
Do they still have to go to the town
So,
board as well?
at the next scheduled meeting, I think it's May the 24th. That's when it will be.
So the process goes now, public hearing, resolution to return the bond, then it goes to the town board to a work session and then a voting session to get the approval to get the bond back. So we're a little bit of time off considering May 24th is the public hearing for this. So assuming everything goes smoothly, end of June is when you should have the bond returned. No
It's a little bit
problem.
of a process, just wanted to be
Yeah,
aware.
it's, you know, it's,
We can't do anything that quickly, so.
God forbid.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
252, 54. relocation of a refuge enclosure. Michael?
Applicant proposes to move the trash enclosure from the rear of the building to the back behind the parking lot. Mike had a few questions. What if the garbage company tries to get the garbage while there's cars parked in those spots? And that shed enclosure on the right side out on Miana, is that still being used? And is it still there, I guess, were the two questions I had. I don't know anything about that, or why it's there. I thought that cleanup was completed.
I think the shed is there, right? The shed.
The EC shed for the air, they do something where they mist, or what do they do? Aerate something, I believe it is.
It's a remediation site for groundwater.
But I don't think it's operated in years, and I'm wondering why it's still sitting there.
Still there, I'm pretty sure, right? The shed.
Tell you.
Into the microphone.
He can answer it if it's okay with you.
Andrew Bork, good evening, everyone.
What's just a minute?
I'm sorry.
Rich? In case you got something else to answer.
So the waiver of the site plan application encompasses a proposal to relocate the existing refuse enclosure. We don't object to the relocation, however, we need to have some graphic representation of vehicle movements through the site to illustrate that sufficient space exists to maneuver vehicles around the site, especially for garbage trucks and whatnot, parking garbage trucks, so.
Matt?
And just to reinforce Mike's question, so the dumpster location is proposed, the applicant, Andrew, if you could just point to where it's going, in front of, behind two parking spaces. So ideally, we want a free and clear accessible location to a dumpster for the reason Mike indicated. But if that's the only possibility, that they would have to schedule their pickups and collections at off hours, for example, it appears that there's a more logical location for that, which is the two parking spaces sort of adjacent to the existing enclosure area. Andrew, if you could point to that, which is those two spaces, instead of right in the middle of the parking lot, which seems like a rather precarious location for this. So just curious why it couldn't be in what would appear to be a more logical location for a dumpster enclosure. But other than that, no objection to the waiver if there's some resolution to the way this could be located.
Can you answer those concerns?
Yes, so I'll start with the DOT shed. It's a separate, or DEC shed. The DEC shed is actually located off of our property. It's in the town's property. We don't have a right to it. The remediation was completed several years ago. I believe the shed was used as a point of aeration. So I believe what they did is they piped into the bedrock, like an oxygenation aeration to try and release toxins from the bedrock to, I guess, cleanse itself. That had stopped even by the time we purchased the property, and it's completely been abandoned. And we asked them about it at the time, and they, I think, thought it was more trouble to remove it than to leave it. So that was the answer. But it is in the public property. It's not our property.
Can you do me a favor then? Have your tenant take the signs off it?
Sure.
That's important, because I see a Green Mountain Coffee sign on there, and on the other side I see your propane tank, not yours, his propane tanks for sale. If it's in the town right away, you should not be storing propane.
And if the shed were to accidentally blow up, it'd be all right.
Regarding the refuse enclosure, the whole purpose that we are moving to relocate it is now that the stores are all leased, because the parking is in the rear, many people are accessing the different stores from the rear entrances. A lot of the tenants found it somewhat unpleasant to be located rather close to the entrances. So it's more just a matter of trying to ensure that the businesses thrive. The choice to avoid locating it here was simply loss of parking spaces. I suppose those could be recaptured here, but this is technically the loading space. So the reasoning behind locating it behind existing parking was basically lack of a better alternative in this instance.
How often does your car here collect the refuse?
I think they come about once a week currently, and the concept was, or the thought, we would mark these two as reserved, and then put signage on the enclosure gate stating parking for gas station employees only. So that way, because they currently do the scheduling with the truck, so they can maneuver if they're in the way. In terms of maneuverability, it's a clear access straight up the drive. They can then back up. I mean, currently now they have to either come in or turn in and then back out. So it has a similar point of access in terms of vehicular movability. And I've actually met with the waste management company in terms of ensuring, because it's up on the curb, that they can access it, as well as the position of the enclosure.
So you don't think it would be inconvenient for your customers to have two of the real prime parking spaces to be restricted to employee parking only? Ordinarily, you want to have employee parking in least attractive parking spaces in the parking lot. Those are probably the two premier parking spaces in that parking lot.
Correct, and it is not ideal. We considered locating it in this area. The only concern with that was, again, just a truck can maneuver to access and pick up waste in that position. It's just, I think, more maneuvering to access it appropriately. But if
What
that's
kind of vehicle collects this? Is this a mechanical vehicle that brings the dumpster into the back?
Exactly, with the forks that lift it up over the cab.
Those would be the two least used spaces in the lot, so you wouldn't have as much likelihood of anybody being in the way, especially at the time they typically come. It's probably mornings, right?
Yes, it's typically in the morning, exactly.
Everybody's gonna wanna be close to the doors.
Right.
Of course, then they have to take the waste a long ways too. The tenants have to carry it.
Yeah,
So a
this
little
is
bit of,
another issue.
on both sides.
They don't want it near the building where it's convenient, so it'll get further away where it's inconvenient.
Somebody's gonna be inconvenienced about it.
You said the waste pickup was roughly when?
It's typically in the morning. It's about once a week at the moment.
Before business hours?
Before business hours, typically, yeah.
And the dumpster enclosure now, for me, is that all the way on the left? Is that where it is right
It's
now?
this
back corner
this rectangle.
Right, that drawn in there.
And then you would pour a pad on up over there to put a, what would?
Yeah. So right now, this is a like an item 2 stone swale. So what I would do is I would fill it in with more stone to allow passage of any water to continue down underneath the enclosure, and do a concrete pad above it.
What kind of businesses are in here?
So at the moment, this is a fuel and convenience store,
Okay,
gas station.
okay.
Then there's
The hair salon is over there.
the hair salon,
Hair salon, it's a
exactly.
dollar store.
I'm just thinking in terms of you're putting it over a storm or a drainage area, what kind of stuff's dripping out of that? But I guess it's coming out in the parking lot anyway, right? Whatever is in there.
Yeah, it's all going
going
into
to the same place.
unfortunately, that's just the,
Well, I guess that raises a whole nother question. If you're filling a storm drain, that storm drain was designed for a reason and with a purpose. So unless you're actually going in and sizing that pipe correctly, that information will need to be provided to us.
well, I could, at the moment, I have, well, I'm not introducing any new water to the pipe.
No, but that's designed for something.
Swale capacity may
Has
be
capacity,
limited.
And now you're limiting that capacity.
Well, I'm not limiting it, because I'm diverting the same amount of water that it's receiving around the
No,
enclosure.
which way, you said there's currently a swale that takes water, I'll call it
So,
east-west, yes,
At the
no?
moment, yes. So this is a hill coming
Yeah.
down towards the property. And at the bottom of the hill, there's a gravel swale, and then underneath the gravel swale is a perforated pipe to bring water towards the
Towards the road.
street. Exactly.
Okay, so presumably the swale has capacity to handle what the pipe below can't under inundation condition, and I guess that's what Rich is getting to, if that,
Exactly.
if that capacity is hindered in any way, that could be an issue.
Which is what you're showing here now, that you're gonna put gravel in there and block water from going where it needs to go to. So that it.
Blocking, well, no, because,
You said
so
you're gonna-
say
you
there's a
said-
volume of
You said you
water.
were gonna fill the swale, correct? You backfill the swale in a certain
No.
area.
No, I'm saying I'm gonna put more gravel over it to ensure that, so the pipe remains the same. I would do gravel over to level this area to ensure that any water flowing through still has the ability to access that pipe.
So you're putting gravel in the swale,
It's already in there.
but now to a certain level, or you're making it higher, or you're making it lower?
I would, so right now, the swale looks like this. So I'd be filling in this piece with additional gravel.
Which goes to my point, you're
Right.
filling in a swale, which needs to, that's where the concern is.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is this would be accepting the same volume of water.
Agreed,
So
right.
it's
But any
just-
water
it's
But
that's
gonna be
it's not
diverted.
conveying it, it's not conveying it the same way now. Now you've done something different, you've altered
Right.
the way it's conveying. You've taken a pipe, I'm not saying this is what you've done, take the pipe, and now you've made it half a pipe or a quarter of a pipe. So the water is not flowing the same way, the conveyance, how it goes from the hill, point A, to point B, the swale, and gets out of Dodge at point C, you've now hindered it. That needs to be assessed as part of this, because I don't know how that swale was designed, why it was designed, if that wasn't provided, and I don't know if there was a subdivision prior to this. And then if, there may not be an issue, you need to prove that. That needs to be shown to the board,
I think
to
it
the
probably is an
engineering
issue,
board.
but you have to do the math that shows that there's not an issue. I think that's where Rich is going, right? And you have to do the
You have to
engineering,
prove
right?
it.
Not to mention those,
Before you write down too much,
Okay.
do you know what he means by you have to prove?
Yeah, so I have to
I mean,
basically
you don't come
generate a
back here- You
calculation.
don't come back here and say a word, you get somebody else to talk for you, that's got some kind of experience in engineering. The engineer, just to illustrate to you what needs to be done, and you bring that back to the engineering department. That's what he means.
Okay.
Because we can't sit here and argue with you about it, and we're not gonna let Rich argue with you about it. We want you to come back and prove that that can be done. Get somebody, an engineer to walk in there and tell you what, and show you what you want to do, and he will verify that that can be done, and we will take his word. Is that fair?
That's
And
exactly
it-
correct.
That's it in a nutshell.
and remember to consider in that, it looks like you're putting a footing along the toe of that slope. Is that correct? Into the gravel, that's what that section's showing, that's new concrete, right?
Which holds water.
Yes, but it
But-
wouldn't,
but
it
that's
doesn't
not-
need to, oh, I see. It wouldn't need to be continuous, so but I see what you're saying, that would be an additional hindrance.
Well, not only that, but there's a load question too on that pipe, I mean, where you're showing it. That cross-section needs to be accurate to depth of pipe versus depth of footing, et cetera. Okay? Because there's lateral load on that. Not a lot, but.
Right, and would the truck be going over that, again, all that
Whatever,
needs
yeah,
to be
all
known,
that
is
kinda
it just
crap.
gonna be the garbage container, and then is the truck gonna have access to it? Can the truck have access to it? Would it be, if the truck pulls on it, you know, next thing you know, they're sitting in a swale, or they're sitting 4 foot deep in stone, you know, those are things that need to now be addressed. Now that you're mentioning it, I thought you were just putting it in the parking spots, wasn't aware that you were putting it over a swale like that.
One last piece of advice. You have to get someone to tell you that has experience what you're doing. swales and that concrete, answer all of those concerns back to the board. And don't mean you buy him a cup of coffee, it means he signs that paper and says, this is what he's going to do. And that's what we look at.
An architect or engineer, I think is what.
Well, he-
I'm a licensed architect.
Right, you need a land use, most likely someone who does land use work. That would probably be where we're kind of going with this.
Yeah.
No, I understand all of your concerns, and I'm gonna work to.
Right, and my suggestion is before you come back here, maybe you sit and talk with Mike and Pat and myself. Pat's here every other Monday, or if Pat can't make it, you sit and talk with us at your next iteration so we can talk about some of these concerns that we have now as a board before you come back and we have to maybe ask you questions. So the intent now would be, let's get this hashed out so that the next time you come here,
You finished?
yeah,
Good
you're
to go.
finished.
I appreciate that, thank
Right.
Yeah.
Just can I bring you back, is that the location you want, or do you
Yeah,
want
let's,
to shift it?
let's just talk a little bit about that. So, your property's a nice property, all in all, I think it's
Much
well
better than
kept,
it
it's a really pretty
Long
nice piece. So, my concerns, again, Route 6 for me is always a visual thing, right? So you're taking something that's kind of tucked behind the building, right? You're not seeing it, now we're kind of putting it out there in the open a little bit, so.
Down the alleyway.
You know, I mean, again, you gotta look down between the buildings to see it, right? But again, it's a nice piece of property, so I would just kind of think it out. Again, I'm not sure, I don't understand the dynamics of the property that well, what the parking issues are. If, maybe you can afford to get rid of a space or two, you know, and move the thing over a little bit to hide behind the building. I don't know, I don't know where you're at with all that kind of stuff. Just take the time to think it out as best you can. It's a nice piece, I don't wanna, and again, I get the concerns about having a dumpster next to my back door. I probably wouldn't want that either. I get all of that. I just think it out. It's a nice piece, let's think it out.
Especially one of them's
You
an
know
ice
that
cream
piece of
store too, I
property?
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
He's
get it.
gonna come down
You
and
don't
sit
need
down
that
and
odor
talk
when
with
you-
three of you,
Yes, sir.
and you tell him where it's acceptable to put those places, give him.
Maybe if you
give
just
him a
jump it
couple
over two
choices.
spaces, you know, you still have the alley, but you're not in the line of sight from Route 6 too much, you know?
I could do some traffic studies,
Yeah.
and I could probably still get an easy access, even if
Right,
it's
just
just slightly over, even if they have to go slightly
Again, the visuals,
over,
the
'cause it's
visuals
just
from Route 6
striping
are
on the
nice
end.
now, right? It's a nice piece, so. Just
Thank
just think it out, you know, are you gonna put whatever the fence is, if we're gonna put a fence around it, what the fence is gonna look like.
Slatted fence.
Again, I think you've well thought out this already,
Yeah, at the
so.
moment, it's gonna be slatted. Currently, it's a wood fence, and unfortunately with the wood fence, even though we sealed it, it still warps
Alright.
a little because they use the thin,
Yeah, it's
So the guy
fine.
doesn't get out to open the gates, he uses the forks to open the gates.
that's what's happening.
No, he doesn't, I follow him around and watch him.
That's good.
Pat,
to
could
know.
you, will you all discuss this with them?
Absolutely.
And remember, he's asking for a site plan waiver, so I think he would be inclined to listen to us, our suggestions, to get that waiver. So it's in the applicant's interest to listen to our concerns.
I'm happy to
It's
sit
something-
with you, and I appreciate it.
I can't guarantee that because he's doing a lot of talking. So maybe he can just
He said he's an architect.
come there and sit down and talk to you. That way we're inclined to believe what the setting clause here, you would look at something that would be beneficial to the town and to him.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll research the file on this to see if there was any prior discussion for the original site plan regarding that location in prior planning boards.
Okay.
Hadn't looked at this, so it might just be, that might help the planning board make a decision also.
My guess is we put it there for a reason, it's the right spot. You're hearing the tenants simply don't like it there, it's too close.
Right, and I agree based on everything you've mentioned this evening, that it is the right spot. And for me, it's the easiest thing to leave it there, because it doesn't cost me any money. But I also need to keep the building rented, so that's the,
We're happy to help you do that.
I appreciate it.
Right now is
So you
when,
understand the thing you need to do?
Yes, I do, sir.
so right now is when you say, I'll consult with your professionals, thank you very much, we'll see you next week. That's what you want to shoot for right now.
Thank you all, and have a lovely evening, and I'll reach out to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Last thing on the agenda is the,
Minutes.
Talk to Joel. He'll know.
minutes from March 29th.
All right, I'll offer the planning board meeting minutes from March 29th, 2017. I've reviewed them and I believe they're accurate.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I've also reviewed the meeting minutes from the April 12th meeting, and I believe they're accurate, and so I'll offer those.
I'll second that as well.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining, I wasn't there for that meeting.
Okay. just before, just before the, close, one thing, happy Mother's Day, Kim.
Here, here.
The next thing is, I didn't get a notice of, an issue until on Saturday night around 11 o'clock, I haven't looked at my phone. And I got a notice that Ray's mother had passed away. And I didn't get a chance, Ray, to, get the board to do anything in there, but I think the board tonight can say to you, I'm very sorry.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
To
Thank
you,
you.
Mr.
And
Pat.
parking though.
If we
Thank you.
had known it sooner, I would've got the board to send something down.
Mm-hmm.
So we can get to it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. It was more than enough that you came, and I appreciate that.
Well, I was very sorry, especially when I noticed that your mother had passed away.
Thanks.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.